Good evening, everybody. A warm welcome to all of you on the panel. And today we are going to discuss about the future of sourcing and procurement and increasing role of vendor management as on today. So, first of all, let us start with where we stand today. So, if we look at the snapshot of procurement or sourcing for last 3 to 5 years, so the situation of business is in a stage where most of the large conglomerates are being encountered by small, nimble, fit startups, and the competition today is actually between the large conglomerates who have a lot of overhead, who have a lot of legacy behind them, versus the startup which are very, very competitive and who have nil overhead as compared to the conglomerates that they are fighting with. And there is nobody who can actually decide the selling price in the market, because the price of product is decided by the market. The only way left out for any organization to thrive in today's situation is by reducing the cost. That is how procurement function over last 5 years have started gaining the traction in the boardroom, because that is the way businesses see that they are going to survive and fight the cutthroat competition that is going in the market. And hence procurement as a function is getting more and more visibility, more and more say in the business. That is on the procurement front. On the vendor side, uh, the these startups are now offering very competitive price to the businesses, and businesses are lured by these startups to getting the products and services from these startups is gaining traction on the other hand. But since these startups are new, they want a win-win arrangement. They are very choosy about getting supplying to the customer, and they are not like older vendor ecosystem. So the supplier relationship is moving more and more toward business partner rather than just the supplier on the one hand. To add to the whole situation, there is a new animal that has came into everyone's life 18 months, 19 months back, is pandemic, which has actually put in a lot of sharks in the fish tank, and which is making everyone's life difficult and put in new challenges across the supply chain and across the businesses. In this scenario, supply chain teams actually came up with a very flashing color, and the importance of supply chain and procurement have actually grown multifold. So today, business are getting more and now since business are getting more and more complex, and they are intertwined between each other. So it is become very, very important to manage the balance between the complexity, the relationship, the pricing, the quality, and all other parameters. So in today's discussion, we have got such a brilliant panel with us. We are going to gain the insight from varied industries, multiple years of experience is speaking behind the panel. So I will start my first question to Mr. Kketan. So I will start with the experience that I have gone through. So sometime back, while we were negotiating with call center operations, there was a debate around that whether to pay more and reduce the number of calls versus whether to pay less on a per call basis. So it was a very, very important debate that happened internally within our organization. And typically we chose to pay more by reduce the call load on our call center, and hence eventually reducing the overall cost. So I think, Mr. Kketan, with your vast experience around the service industry, you must be coming across such challenges in your area of operation, where you would encounter whether to reduce cost on per unit basis or to look for avenues to enhance revenue or cut down the cost at all. So how do you handle such situations if you encounter in your environment?
Good evening, all. First of all, as you rightly mentioned, so we being in a service industry, wherein the biggest challenge for us is ours is a push product and it is not a pull product. To sell something as an insurance is very push, though COVID have changed the mindset of people and people are now buying insurance, etc. But it was always a challenge for us being a push product. So at the same time, and having said so, then there is always a pressure on reduction of cost on our operations cost. How do we reduce it? How do we do that thing, right? So in my experience, what we have in this journey, what we have done is the way you mentioned, we don't call a supplier as a supplier, but we call them a business partner. So we got an element of adding a skin in game kind of a thing. So wherein we actually make them a partner and say, okay, I make your payment structure in such a way that you take something as a fix and then something you also plays a role and tell me how can you reduce my cost or how can you bring in value addition, because every time having a negotiation lever doesn't help to all the organization. So we have to try out different kind of negotiation lever, which can be a product, which can be a say a demand lever, or which can be a process change lever, in which I would need help from my supplier saying, okay, boss, I need your help. How do you bring down the cost? So that is the reason we have brought this element of skin in game, wherein they help us, and they over a period of time we have seen that it has really helped us, because if you see, then supplier for me is one supplier, but for supplier I'm the one client, but he is a multiple client. So having said the industry experience he will bring in, and he'll able to help me out. How do I reduce my cost? Having said, okay, you can do this kind of reduction, you bring some intelligence into it. The way you give example of a contact center. See, I will not have I will not have a control on outbound or inbound call, because I cannot reduce number of inbound calls because it is my customer. I cannot say them you don't call me. At the same time, for outbound, if there is some data set which I have to call up, then it is my business. So that also I cannot do. But I can try to reduce my AST on the calls, and I can bring in some AI intelligence, bot intelligence, etc. in it, wherein my contact center cost goes down. So that is how we build this our ecosystem, and that's how we plan during our the start of the financial budgeting exercise. That these are the particular projects or these are the places where we will bring down the cost. That's how we always try and draw our journey for every financial year.
So interesting insight. So actually, you are standing up to the statement that actually you are calling, not just calling business partners, but you are actually involving vendors in your business and linking their payout through your. If you win, they win. If you lose, they lose.
Yeah, that's what. So over a period of years, so in our organization, even I have the way we say, okay, a procurement officer or whatever way it is. But then I've defined, so I'm practicing this since last 1.5 2 years, because pandemic has a flip side of, or I will say, I would say pandemic is a very positive thing, not from an human health per se, but from in technology per se, that how people have evolved, how things got changed, how people started looking world in a very different way. So that's how we derived very too much value from the pandemic. We got some extra benefits to the organization, having said so in a pandemic way. So then we call ourselves as a not as a procurement officer, but we ourselves brand as a chief value officer rather than CPO. I would call ourselves as a CVO, the chief value officer, who brings a lot of value in the table and have a visibility in organization in a CXO level. Till now, which was not there. But now, as you rightly said, people are seeing the value, but this value we have created by showcasing ourselves as a chief value officer and not as a procurement officer, just as a procurement.
Good. I totally agree with you, because actually this pandemic has brought in a paradigm shift in the thought process of each and every individual around. Okay, so next question I would like to Mr. Sumit. Mr. Sumit, you have a lot of experience around manufacturing. And typically, manufacturing setup always had a very robust supplier relationship mechanism in place when you compare it with any other service.
I think Sumit, you will have to mute till his question is complete because there is disturbance. You can switch on once the question is complete.
Yeah. Okay. So, Mr. Sumit, because you have been working in manufacturing for quite a time, and typically manufacturing setup had a uh, well-defined and well-oiled supply relationship mechanism in place. So, since you have been into this industry for quite a time, so can you just let us know that how important it is for your business and any other business to have supplier relationship mechanism in place? And if you have got some examples around it, that this is how you happen to manage this relationship, it will be good for us.
Yes, thanks a lot, Mr. Jaswinder, and thanks a lot, Mr. Kketan, for your inputs. Okay, first I'd like to explain that scenario is changing. So every customer expectation is changing on quality front on day by day, and every customer is expecting value for money, specifically Indian, customer. We can pay for everything. We can buy a normal phone and we can buy iPhone also. So value is important. And day by day, this value requirement is changing. We are lucky guys. We all are sitting here. We have seen the letters are going by post, and now we are sitting in the internet era. So point I try to make, the world is changing, and accordingly, as a manufacturing company, we are also changing. And for this, a supplier-customer relationship is very, very important. In this relationship, as Mr. Kketan said, business partner approach is very, 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 very important, because only then you can keep on improving value for the customer, and you can match this changing environment. When you talk about business partner, then of course we are looking for strategic business partner relationship. How we can make a two-way communication system between strategic supplier base and our company. First thing, for supplier also and for customer also, creating their brand value is very, very important. Brand value, what I say, honoring your commitments, giving value to the customer, delivering product on QCD parameters for any organization, and honoring your commitments whenever you are giving to any of the customer. Two-way flow of information nowadays through vendor portal has really changed, because the flow of information and the flow of data at this point of time is very important in this changing world. COVID teaches a lot of lesson, and the data had really helped all the organization to change in these scenarios. And this changing scenarios is forcing all CPOs to redesign their supply chain. And of course, whenever you are working with any strategic supplier base, if you are winning, if you are achieving certain milestones, so enjoying those milestones is very, very important, with reward of new business to those strategic suppliers. So yes, this over and above this, there should be a manufacturing setup guidelines for each and every product, because if you are following the rules in a manufacturing setup, you can definitely make changes. Over and above rules, working on innovation on each and every product day by day is very, very important. And that's where strong customer supplier relationship can be built, and we can add value for the customer. So nowadays, I believe in this tough situation, this is an opportunity to give more value to the customer, so that customer can support the complete supply chain. So that's my thought.
So, okay. So I hear you like this, that end of the day, customer is the king. And it is whatever we are doing is ultimately for end customer. Until the time this whole supply chain is not very well oiled, it is not going to help. And technology being the enabler throughout, and data being the driver for that enabler, is helping you as an organization to actually deliver good quality to the customer and to the expectation of the customer, so to say. Good, right? Interesting insight. So next question I'll put to Ms. Neelam. So I think you have spent substantial number of years in automobile industry, and this industry is, because I also happen to work for this industry for roughly around 5 years, and I think automobile is the industry which has actually mastered this supplier relationship ecosystem, wherein everything was like written down to the last full stop in a very detailed fashion. This being a very old industry, that is how processes and every document has matured over a period of time. But and how do you see this going forward? Whether this phenomena will be adopted by all the industries, or will it be limited to manufacturing, or within manufacturing it will be limited to automobile, or this is bound to go beyond those boundaries of past and actually over exceed all the limitations that are currently existing?
So first of all, good evening, everyone, and thank you for the question, Jaswinder. In almost 20 years of my experience in auto industry and now the power sector, auto industry has always carved this vision in terms of the processes, in terms of this relationship, supplier and OEMs relationships. And they have surely, as you have rightly said, a very mature processes to, have this whole supplier relationship part. If you'll ask me whether this is, this is going to be there with, and other industries are going to be adopting it, with the at least 3 industry experiences, I believe surely, because this is the key. Today, OEMs are just not looking, because the business is just not being buying and selling. The OEMs are looking for, as somebody was mentioning, the long-term sustainable relationships with their partners. I'll call suppliers as the supplier partners. This is the kind of thing that we are now been into. Long-term sustainable relationships, strategic partnerships. So it's not that, okay, since I have to buy today, so I'll engage with the supplier and then into this. Today, both this, because it is about creating value together. It is about offering a product which is more cost efficient, much better, and more competitive, to our customers. And for us OEM and us supplier, and once they find this, their customer accepting this, naturally both of them are going to have their benefits and creating that value together. And that's the reason it is very, very important. In fact, it is the key to hold this supplier relationships going forward, that how longer that they can see these relationships and how strategic. Today, just to give you an example, it's not that OEMs are just looking to buy. In fact, they are together looking to invest not only in the money, but also in the talent, improving the processes, quality, and everything about the product together. So that's the reason. And as somebody was mentioning there, today, in fact, we are including our partners much early in the design phases to have their inputs, because we know in some areas they have more expertise than us, especially when we are creating that subcomponents. So it is how early we are integrating them, how longer term we are envisioning them to take this whole partnership together. And not only that, only one industry, but every industry. This is the key to sustain. And pandemic has taught this lesson very well. The organizations that has a very strong built up for this partnership, we saw them surviving, we saw them, continuing their business, and we saw them how, I'll say, successfully they are coming out of this whole crisis situation, especially in the supply chain area. So, with all this, I believe this is going to be the key and going to be done surely in all the industry, be it IT, manufacturing, consumables, power, anything. This is the key to sustain for any industry.
Very interesting, Neelam. I think it is very important for any business to actually understand and realize that no business is expert in all the domains. It is our partners who are actually domain expert. To acknowledge this fact and actually work in this direction is a very, very strong point. And with Mr. Sumit also saying so, and you also harping on, it is more about value creation rather than anything else. If we make the supply chain adding value at each step, I think that is the that has to be the ultimate goal for everyone around. Thank you, Neelam. And next, I would like to ask Mr. Ajit. Mr. Ajit, you are veteran in food industry, and when it comes to food as an industry, I think quality plays a very pivotal role. And uh, since it is a food, I think judging the quality and producing and delivering it to the right place will require huge amount of relationship, and it requires right set of partners to be in place. Um, and the quality of food product will have direct impact on your business. So how do you handle the whole ecosystem around this, that selecting the right partner, delivering the right quality, at uh, uh, the right balance around it?
Yeah, regardless of the industry, or regardless of the company, I think some of the basic principles remain the same, or the foundational guidelines, they remain the same. So yeah, of course, with food and with the business that we are in, which is in snacking, delivering the right quality to the consumer, and safe products, and products that are good to taste, and at the same time at the right quality. That's very important. But I think in terms of, when it comes to partner management or vendor management, the basic principles remain the same. And if you see in recent times, we have all fallen into the trap of having a lot of transactional engagements with suppliers, and most of it has been primarily focused on cost and on price. But if you see what has happened with pandemic, and this is very similar to all the other points that have been made by the previous panelists as well, most of the companies that have done well or survived through this pandemic are the ones who have had close engagements with their suppliers. And having close engagements, it helps in many cases. So you're much closer to the market. You get a lot of access to market intelligence, which means that you're able to react to any fluctuations in the market or any oncoming disruptions with a higher amount of agility. So I think we are now going into a phase where we will start to have much closer relationships with suppliers, not just companies in the food industry, but also companies in the other industry. And this is not a realization that is limited to, say, supply chain or procurement. I think if you would have noticed that with the supply shortages that you've seen in the pandemic, every function in your organization, whether it's sales, whether it's marketing, whether it's the head of the business, they're starting to realize the importance of supply chain, the importance of procurement. They're starting to realize the importance of having robust and strong supply relationships. They're starting to realize that supply relationships are not just to be owned by procurement. They are to be owned by everyone in the company, which means that there has to be engagement between the supplier and the buyer organizations at all levels, right? So, the chief procurement officer probably needs to have a direct line to, to the founder or the CEO of the supplier organization, right? And how do you define a deep engagement or a close engagement? I think one of the principles is, of course, engagement at all levels, which I think we are seeing across the industry now. The other one is having transparent sharing of information, visibility. So how do you share your business forecast, your business plans for short to medium to long term, and how does that translate into the planning of production or capacity or procurement at the supplier end. Risk management and business continuity planning, right? When we face our partner, that partner is kind of the tier one. There is a tier two supplier, and there is also a tier three supplier. And if you notice in the pandemic, most of the risks or supply shortages that came up, it was primarily due to a failure not at tier 1 but at tier 2 or tier 3. So I think it has become extremely important post the pandemic that we are mapping, at least for the key suppliers or the critical suppliers, multiple tiers of suppliers and looking into the risks and all that. But for that, you need your direct partners engagement and your direct partners support. Now you'll get that support only if you have a deep engagement and a long-term engagement and a very sound partnership. And then I think you need to have a very good mutual value proposition defined. Right? I mean, for example, what are the new products that your organization is coming up with, and how can the supplier organization help you with? What are the new technologies that the supplier organization can bring on board? And then one of the points which Neelam mentioned, which is how do we involve them as early in the value chain as possible? As higher up in the value chain as possible. So at the design phase, collaborate in all those phases, because that's where I think design is coming up as a very, very important part. I mean, in multiple aspects, not just product, not just cost, not just value to the consumer, but also sustainability and many other aspects. So, and there, when you're designing, you need to design with a holistic view, which only your partner can give you. So I think these are all the aspects and repetition of the multiple points which have been made by the panelists. But I think that's in my view.
Yeah. So very, very correctly said. So what you primarily mentioned is that you need to have a hotline between partner and your organization, and not only at one level but almost all the levels. And the engagement has to start really from the beginning, and there has to be sort of trust and sharing of innovative ideas, sharing of whatever you are doing, because partners are who are going to support and run the machinery at the end of the day. So you need to have really very, very close coordination with all the partners to make it happen. And value, definitely, it is coming in all the panelists' top priority, that we need to generate value out of the transactions that we are doing. Yeah, very well said. So, Mr. Aditya, next question is to you. We recently realized the importance of supply chain in chemical industry, wherein a lot of heartburn, heat burn, and all burns have happened. So how are you looking at your industry? What are your plans, and how do you see things on your side of industry?
Thanks, Jaswinder. It's interesting as well as a challenging question for the chemical industry. We all know that whenever it goes wrong, the first needle stops at chemical industry, that these guys are spoiling the environment or doing this, that. So yes, but like other industry, this industry as well working to be a future ready kind of a environment and bring out certain solutions. And if I see being into almost 20 plus years in the industry and associated with more than 30 plus with this industry, chemical industry, like other industry, also working parallelly on multiple fronts to not only to deliver future expectation to the society, to the consumers, to the ultimate environment, etc., and trying to be a future ready wherein there are solutions and best practices in context to environmental and sustainability aspect, competitiveness aspect, or so to say, meeting rules and regulations, law of the land, and various, because this is one of the industry where the law of the land differs from continent to continent, country to country, and even on the water area. So having, if I just substantiate this with an example, probably people in the Western world are very much aware compared to some of the Asian countries or some of the African countries. That does not mean the hazardness or the safety aspects are reduced when it is with the Asian guys or if it is the Western guys. But certainly as a responsible manufacturer and as a responsible care company, most of the larger organization having business in the chemical space are using technology to be at front of safety, health, and environment. And some of those technologies are also helping us in our functional excellence of the procurement process, maybe digitization or artificial intelligence or data analytics or connectivity through blockchain. And these are things which I see has helped this industry quite a lot in meeting industry expectation, along with similar leveraging this technology for various other solutions to be a future ready kind of a segment, whether it's a green technology, whether it's R&D and innovation related investments, or making an integrated operation on a flexible plant to ensure that there is no such compromise on health, safety, and environment. Again, I'll just give you example to understand how this things goes in. I worked for two companies called Honeywell and DuPont, and both are huge multinational in terms of a chemical space. I would say collectively more than 80-90 billion dollar. And both these companies spent around 10 years to develop a refrigerant. We all use current refrigerant in our car for the air conditioning is R134A. And with the 10 years of research and huge amount of money, these both companies developed a refrigerant called 1234YF, which has not come to India as yet, because India will phase out existing refrigerant by 2024. But the one basic difference between both these refrigerant is that the current refrigerant what we are using has capability to pollute our environment almost 1400 times larger than this new molecule. So the ozone layer depleting, global warming, and or these asthmatic and all these pollution related stuff, probably people blame to the chemical industry, but this industry also investing a lot of money to make our lives better, whether it's a production of agro commodity, whether the cleanliness of environment, or etc., etc. So we do understand that if this industry has to be going forward, grow and deliver sustainable solution, right investment, right technologies, right training, and other stuff has to be go hand in hand basis to create a safe work environment or safe ease of use kind of a solution to the end users. And that perspective is quite challenging, as well as require a lot of investment and other things, which is making chemical industry to be a future ready. And for example, I work currently for a company called Dorf, and we every year buy almost 20 new materials. So when you buy 20 new materials every year, you need to understand the various health, safety related environmental impact from those chemistries. And you can only understand when you go much more deeper and create required provisions in your day-to-day working for your employees as well as for your customers. So these are some of the stuff which we are actually doing along with our core activities, whether we work in a supply chain, procurement, sales, or somebody has said that value creator, maybe chemical industry itself is also looking to create a value for the customers while making that happen for the organization as well.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Aditya. I think you touched upon two important topics. One is technology, and second is the risk, safety, health, and well-being. So taking a cue from there, I will switch to Mr. Venu. Mr. Venu, you are working in all these areas of managing risk, how to mitigate, how do we eliminate the risk from the overall supply chain ecosystem. So what do you think? are we, how do we, how to evaluate risk in the whole supply chain ecosystem? And do you think we are ready to evaluate and eradicate risk from the supply chain systems as of now?
So, good evening, everyone, and thanks, Mr. Saini, for that question. So, I'll just try to give all of you a gist about what we do as an information company and how do we add value to to the whole supply chain ecosystem. So evaluating suppliers, or rather the word that was used here was partners, and I would stick to that, because partners, understanding your partners' financial and non-financial parameters is something that we are well versed with, and that's what our core competency is. We try and understand, go deeper to understand how a company is working. So financial stability of a company becomes very important, even when you are assessing your suppliers and partners. If they are unstable, they could end up shutting shop and probably not getting probably affecting the supply chain totally. So it's just not financial. Financials are something that I always say changes only 12 months in the history of a company. But what does not change, what changes every day are the non-financial parameters. You're looking at, are they GST compliant? Are they GST compliant? Or do they have, are they involved in anti-money laundering, or maybe what are the legal cases around them? So if there are legal cases around your suppliers, your partners that you work with, it becomes difficult for companies to operate with this kind of with a supply chain network. What are the kind of debt they have raised in the market? We going far deeper, probably to understand, do a site visit to understand if these companies are really fly-by-night operators or not. So I'll just go by the one of the pieces which Ajit had just co-panelist Ajit had just taken a point, which was the pandemic is not about has not actually brought situation of partner at a tier 1 stage. It's more about tier 2 and tier 3. So a situation where your tier 3 supplier may not be even maybe completely in debt, that he's not able to supply to his tier 2 or a tier 1. So everyone gets affected in the chain. Understanding everyone at every stage, from a financial and non-financial standpoint is important, because if your suppliers and partners are not financially stable, it's you may have a right price with your supplier, but understanding his business in depth is more important. I also wanted to just probably touch base about two other pieces which also comes with this assessment. It helps you probably assign a kind of credit for your supplier, what kind of credit you need to extend, whether you have to issue a credit line for him to supply certain products to you on time. It is also important to understand the credit worthiness of these suppliers, but all of us keep looking at somebody was speaking about the BCP plan, somebody spoke about assessment of your partners, working together as a partner, kind of a network kind of a setup. But it is going far beyond that to understand not only information from financial standpoint, also from a cyber threat standpoint. So I'll give you a simple example. Let's take you have a company, and let's take one of your key suppliers are based out of China, for example, and let's take there's a cyber threat that has affected that company, and the company is down 8 days, and 8 days not supplying you your key component could actually affect your supply chain globally. So are we going far beyond getting information from a KYC standpoint, or probably getting information from a due diligence standpoint? Are we going also deeper to understand, are these suppliers even cyber safe? So this is certain piece that no one has actually probably thought about, and I think the pandemic is something that has actually brought the cyber threat standpoint importance more felt, because large, medium, and even small companies are today affected by cyber threats. So how do you assess companies even from a cyber threat standpoint? Are your suppliers really or your partners safe, or cyber safe, or financially stable to supply those the ABC or whatever the contract that you are into? So the information becomes a key important tool, and that's the piece that CRIF is into, where how we are able to assess or help our partners or our clients to understand their partners from an information standpoint. That's it from my end, Saini.
Great insight, Mr. Venu. Thank you for sharing your thoughts on this. I think it is very important to actually deep dive into a partner's health, so to say. It is important because you can't go very long way with a partner who is actually not in a fit state. Okay, so with this we actually covered how we look into the partner and partner business relationship. Now let us try to get into the future of procurement. Where do we see it going forward? So I'll start again with Mr. Kketan. So uh, so in some of the countries, when we hear that procurement is now being looked at as a service, and some of the countries are actually actually implementing it on the ground. Do you see some opportunities that procurement can be outsourced to some third party? Is it manageable? Is it doable? Do you see some challenges, or do you see that this is the procurement will go ahead going forward?
We lost your voice in between.
Hello. Okay, let me repeat my question. So, so procurement as a services is coming as a concept in some of the countries. So businesses are giving their procurement to a third party to actually run. Do you think this concept is going to run in our country? Is there a possibility to outsource certain portion of procurement and give it to somebody to run it for on our behalf? Do you see it happening, or is it not a possibility?
So, this particular point we ponder upon 3-4 years back in our organization as well. But having said so, I don't think this will happen ever because it's a very close card to any organization, because it has a lot of internal information, a lot of other stuff which is there, which cannot be diluted in a way by giving it just an outsourcing activity. It's not just a very simple task. It's related, everything is related to money, which ultimately will hit your company's P&L, etc. So I don't think that this will ever happen. In my experience, that it will go to some outsourcing or some third party doing it. It can be some process can be done, some other aspect of it can be a part of this thing, but core procurement, according to me, will not be outsourced. Others in the group panelists may opine on this, but according to me, this will happen.
Okay, so I understand because this is the function which is very close to the heart of business. So, Mr. Aditya, if I may ask you, uh, if not outsourcing, is it possible that two different set of businesses they may collaborate with each other, or maybe similar industries collaborate with each other? There are enough examples in past, like telco sharing the towers, a lot of people sharing the transportation, FMCG engaging with some other company to share the truckloads. Is there a possibility there so that it can be? So ultimate agenda is to reduce the cost. If by doing such collaboration, cost can come down. Is this the way the procurement can go ahead with, or do you think that is feasible to do?
I think very interesting perspective, and I feel say good to say that this has been happening in chemical industry for not only from few years but from good 10-12 years. Not only on the manufacturing side but on the logistics side, warehousing side, R&D side as well. So if I give a, let's say, give very example in the chemical industry in China, unlike India, in this particular segment, China has a collaborative kind of approach for R&D. So if they develop some molecule, very second day, it is available to 10, 12 different producers to produce. And that's one of the reasons where Western world want to stay a little bit away from China, because they lose out technologies there. On the contrary, in India, to an extent, if it is a confidential information, people like to do R&D stuff in a very, very close way and take the benefit of patent and various other edge on the technology side for a much more sustainable basis. But there is always strategic stuff, there is always routine stuff, there is always generic stuff where people are looking for cost competitiveness, creating competitiveness, and sharing the cost. So I would say a very recent regulation which has come into the Europe, which was related with the REACH registration, where any molecule, if somebody is selling into European Union, they have to ensure that their product is REACH registered, which means product is registered with respect to their safety, hazardness, and various other environmental impact. Typical cost of such registration is too high, which is very difficult for a single producer or manufacturer to bear. It will make their cost or price of the product very, very high. So there the countries came with a collaborative approach. I said, okay, I am going to export X molecule to Europe, X quantity. You are going to export 2X quantity. Somebody is 4X. Let's pay the fees in a very collective manner and get all of ourselves endorsed in that registration process. So that's a very nice example which has happened. As I in my previous comment shared that the example of DuPont and Honeywell doing a joint R&D, there are many companies now in the Western world finding very difficult to compete with China or any other large scale producer. And they are collaborating to engage. For example, if you're producing product A and product B, I am also producing product A and product B, and losing out of the economic scale, I say, okay, you produce product A and I will produce product B, and we will share certain volumes. And then we can beat the most competitive manufacturer of the world. And that's exactly happening in the chemical industry today. And that's also created a kind of an innovative, sustainable approach where, because in the chemistry, there are more than 1,000 set of reaction. Not any company will have all those set of reaction in their premises. So they leverage, whether it's an inter or intra, they leverage each other and try to see that the customer gets the most competitive and most, say, qualitative solution for their need, etc. So it is very much happening. And it has been happening from quite some time. Now the technology has facilitated this further. And whether it's your own plant or it's an external supplier, you are integrating through blockchain and various other digitalization tools like it is your own unit. So yes, it is happening, and it is making the very good value proposition for the end users.
Yeah. So good. At least we know that intra companies, there is a possibility, and it is actually giving value to the businesses if we go into that direction. So I think we all have to evaluate going in that direction wherever it is possible. Okay, coming to Mr. Sumit, I think next question is to you. So with the increasing weightage that is coming to procurement, how do you see that the boardroom people look at procurement as a function? I know for sure we are getting more and more weightage these days, but how do you see it transforming maybe down the line?
Thanks, Jaswinder. So, why more and more weightage? First, we need to understand this. Okay, yes, procurement is a very important function, and since last 2 years, since COVID is there, so sales are down. So, organization are having already fixed cost, and ultimately, and on other side, commodity is going up. As far as percentage profitability of any organization, it is going down. And yes, COVID will be there for maybe another 2 to 3 years. As on today, for each and every product, around 70 to 80% of the factor is raw material cost, or your input cost. Hence, the procurement is a very important function for any organization. So yes, the focus is there. Focus is on complete supply base, and it will keep on increasing to bring profitability for the organization in one or another form, because it directly affects bottom line. As I earlier said, more value in the supply chain. Yes, we supply chain, because scenarios are also changing. So supply chain need to be very attentive on changing scenarios. So yes, collaboration, which Mr. Jaswinder, you said, collaboration with the supplier is very, very important, so that we can give more value to the organization. Innovation in the process, innovation in the raw material is the key as on today to increase profitability in automobile sector. Of course, in other sectors also, in chemical and other industries. And of course, business consolidation at strategic supplier base. So these are the main things where every management is now focusing on, so that they can improve their bottom line. So hence, in order to maintain profitability of the organization, is the you say now fittest person will survive in this tough situation.
Thank you, Sumit. Next question to Neelam. Two questions I have. Do you see the internal stakeholders giving more importance to SCM as a team these days? And do you see in your area, can we go to outsourcing as a model, giving it some, if not everything, not critical items, maybe uh, long tail item to third party to do the procurement on your behalf? Is it possible to look at those aspects?
Thanks for the question. I'll answer the first question first. So whether the procurement guys we see increasing importance or not, I'll say procurement always had that importance, and there is a reason for it. I'll start with a simple example, and there is no offense to the design people here, but it's like design team gets their all time to design and develop and test and everything. When it comes to develop commercially and develop a supplier, what happens is whatever the design delays are built in, those goes on compressing the time for the procurement guys or the supply chain guys. So we procurement people and supply chain people are always, I'll say more 90% of the time, are so much used to work under that time pressure, cost pressure, delivery pressure. Because it's not only that, okay, we have to deliver the best in cost, we have to deliver on time with no quality issues, and with all that now the design has been delayed. So procurement has been working with this, and with all this, it's always that this has been a key function. Second point here is, for any organization, and I am referring more towards the manufacturing and the power industry kind of organization, 70% of their cost is impacted, or I'll say controlled, and their EBITDA margins are controlled by the procurement function. Reason we all know that if we do not do our cost reductions, if we do not get the best efficient in terms of getting the best efficient cost process components, we know we are not going to make the margins as an organization whole. So procurement always had. The pandemic, in fact, has shown the people that how even in difficult situation when my supplies are blocked, still we work day and night virtually with all the restrictions to deliver the material, to continue the operations, and still making our customers fulfillment. So it's going to grow up. The part of the second question that you asked, yes, there is a possibility, and I'll tell you the kind of items of the components. So there is now a strategic procurement and there is an operational procurement. And then, so the part of operational procurement, or the part of the catalog kind of items that, or the services for which I already have a fixed value, I have fixed the prices, and now it's more of procuring the things. That is a possibility that could be transferred to a third party as a services, because investing my people doing an operational job, which can be done at much lower cost, I think it's better to hire a third party to do those kind of procurement. But when it comes to strategic procurement, when I need to develop my suppliers for a longer term, for a strategic components, to develop the critical supplier partners, to develop the strategies for my organization in terms of the procurement, I believe those portions are going to still being with the organizations, and organizations will have a control on it. As I said, that we impact the EBITDAs and we impact the cost of the organizations a lot. And I don't think any organization will let that strategic thing go off themselves. So this is how I see it in future. It is like all the non-strategic purchases, all the non-strategic buyings, fixed cost buying, or the smaller items, or those which has a smaller value and for which already I have cataloged them, standard of the shelf parts. Those kind of thing will go off and might go off with the third party, and that is how the organizations are doing it. That is also making their process more efficient with lean structures and with more output with each individual, and investing their the fourth point that I wanted to say here is, answering on the second part. Now the procurements are also investing in their talent to develop the school of purchasing. I'll say this is a kind of, or the center of excellence for purchasing, so that we develop our guys more into strategic thinking for the whole supply chain, and not only that I have to go and buy and negotiate something. So these are the things that has been coming up, and that's making the procurement more powerful, more I'll say the whole integrated system, not only procurement, the whole order fulfillment part of SEM, much more visible, much more, I'll say, powerful, and much more now, I'll say, the respect coming up from the other operational and the other part of the organization.
Great. Thank you, Neelam, for that. We are running short of time. Very quickly, I will ask Mr. Ajit, since you have been working out of country, is there anything that we should learn out from other countries that is probably missing? A quick 1 minute.
No, I think the core principles remain the same, and I think with the pandemic there's been a lot of learnings in terms of how we should move forward and manage risk better. I think with the pandemic, supply chain and procurement as a function has really emerged. There is a lot of focus on talent, so probably that's one area where probably a lot of focus is required. How do we develop future supply chain leaders or procurement leaders, and even what kind of skill sets and trainings, because the kind of skills that are deployed today, today when we talk procurement, we talk more about price, negotiations, contracting, but I think going forward it's going to be a lot of relationship management, it's going to be a lot of risk management, it's going to be a lot of how do you assess the market, how do you gather intelligence, how do you gain insights out of that, and how do you communicate back to your organization. So your procurement is kind of the bridge between the organization and the external world. So how do you keep a pulse on the market, and how do you communicate that back to the organization, because the organization will always have multiple lenses of viewing the market. So how do you bring the two together, and how do you reconcile? I think that's one of the key changes.
Great. So thank you everyone, and with the panelists, if may I ask, how do you see procurement down the line, maybe 5 years to 10 years, if you have to say one line? So all of you, if you can share your thought around what will be procurement down the line, 5 years or 10 years, one liner if I have to ask, starting with Mr. Kketan. Hello. I think he missed the question.
Mr. Jaswinder, we just request you, in interest of time, to wrap up on the same, if that's okay. We'd of course request Kketan to complete what he was about to say. Kketan, over to you. I believe there's some technical issue, if I'm not wrong, on Kketan's end. But with this, Jaswinder, we just request your final thought.
Okay, so thank you everyone. I think we had a wonderful round of session with all of you. We realized the importance of supplier. Now moving to partner relationships have transformed over a period of time. pandemic has actually taught us a lot of things, and technology has came up as a very, very clear, very clear output of the pandemic, that we need to go through technology. We need to use the data as much as possible. We need to see how we evolve post pandemic. Then we also realize that it is not about cost, it is about value that we need to add at each and every step. And that is how a future look like. When we look at the procurement as a future, we see there is a lot of opportunities in terms of engaging intra-company at the procurement level. There is a lot of opportunities to engage with different organizations and see what can be leveraged out of those relationships. That is where we think procurement is heading to. And suppliers will, end of the day, play a very, very pivotal role in the success of any organization, especially if we are able to start from the design phase to the delivery phase. That is going to help us. Communication plays a very, very important role that come out very clearly. And communication has to happen not only at procurement level, but at all levels of
Absolutely.
the organization.
Right. So